Well, good evening, everyone. Ethan back for a album review tonight. And tonight I'm going to be reviewing or rating one of my favorite albums from one of my favorite bands. You can see it in the glare. Led Zeppelin 2. Bad lighting. But this is Led Zeppelin's second album, released October 22nd, 1969 through Atlantic Records, recorded April through August of 69, and produced through guitarist Jimmy Page. The band consisted of Robert Plant on vocals, Jimmy Page on guitar, acoustic and electric, John Paul Jones on bass, and John Bonham, the late John Bonham, on drums and percussion. I also have Led Zeppelin 4 on vinyl, and these two are arguably my favorite Led Zeppelin records. They're probably also two of their most well-known. I also love Houses of the Holy and Physical Graffiti. Led Zeppelin 3 and Led Zeppelin 1 I really like, but not quite as much. But for me, this Led Zeppelin 2 is the pinnacle. I know Led Zeppelin 4 has Stairway to Heaven. I love Stairway to Heaven. It's played a little overplayed on FM rock radio, but I love Led Zeppelin 4. Black Dog, I love Black Dog. Great song. When the Levee Breaks. But for me, Zepp 2 is them at their heaviest, their bluesiest, and just their most creative. This is considered their heaviest album. Let me open it up real quick, and there's a picture of the band right there. Of course, you got John Paul Jones, Robert Plant, John Bonham, and Jimmy Page right there. Well, the first track is Whole Lotta Love, and what a way to kick off an album. I mean, that opening riff and that opening bass line is just classic. What an epic way to start an album. It's actually sued for plagiarism for this song, but they won it in court, I read. I mean, just that thunderous John Bonham bass that starts off Whole Lotta Love, that so good. To me, the rhythm section of Led Zeppelin made them. Very similar to Black Sabbath, for example. Two bands that are pioneers in the hard rock and heavy metal genre. Sabbath, more heavy metal. Zepp, more hard rock, but they also contributed. Such a tight rhythm section. John Paul Jones on bass, John Bonham on drums. Just such a tight rhythm section. And to me, they were the bread and butter of Led Zeppelin. Plant, great vocalist, great singer. Jimmy Page, one of the greatest guitarists of all time. But the heavy bass lines and the thunderous drums of John Bonham just make some of these tracks and these records. Just like, say, for Black Sabbath with Geezer Butler and Bill Ward. The bass just adds to the heaviness of Whole Lotta Love. The guitar riff is classic. The vocals, the screeching vocals of Robert Plant, of course. Excellent, such a classic tune. I mean, at the time in 1969, this was 51 years ago, there was not much heavier than this at the time. Really nothing. For 69, this was a heavy, heavy hard rock, blues rock, and even proto metal album. And that's why it's my favorite Zeppelin album. With Zeppelin 4 very close, but Zeppelin 2 right there at the top. Someday, if I get all the Zeppelin albums, I'd love to do a ranking the albums of Zeppelin. Of course, 2 would be first, 4 would be second. Third would probably be Houses of the Holy. Fourth, probably Physical Graffiti. No, fourth would probably be the first one, and then fifth would be Physical Graffiti, and then the others I haven't really listened to them much. I don't know much about them to rank them, but if I ever do get all their Led Zeppelin albums, I'd love to do like ranking the albums of them. The next song on Zep 2 is What Is and What Should Never Be. Again, that kind of classic start-stop style of Led Zeppelin, where Plant's singing kind of softly and tranquil, and then the drums and the guitar kicks in, and then it continues that kind of the acoustic from Jimmy Page mixed with the soft vocals, and then wham bam, the heavy comes in. Two great songs to start an album off. I mean, they're so heavy, especially for 1969. Nothing was heavier. Again, throughout both these tracks, the bass and the drums are excellent. John Bonham, John Paul Jones, excellent rhythm section. And then you have the Lemon Song, which is also a cover, I believe, of a guy named Howling Wolf. He's like a blues singer from the 40s or 50s. I mean, the lyrics are kind of self-explanatory. I won't get into that. It's not that kind of channel. But just another great bluesy number. I mean, hard bluesy guitar riffs and, just shrieking vocals from Robert Plant. Just excellent vocal performance all around on this song. And then Thank You to Inside One, I read was a tribute to Plant's wife at the time. I believe her name was Maureen something. But and it's sort of Zeppelin's version of Beth or something. But it's a good song, very good song. A mellower song. When the first three songs are that heavy, I guess you need a little bit of a mellower song to kind of take a breather. And then that's it for side one. And then side two starts with one of my favorite, if not my favorite Zeppelin song, Heartbreaker. I remember when I first heard that riff and I just thought, wow, this guy can really play. This band is awesome. Just that da 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 da. Great opening riff. I mean, often covered but never replicated. And this song was just written to sort of Jimmy Page wrote it to sort of showcase his excellent guitar skills. It's sort of a a lot of the songs before this and before Sabbath, but this predates the release of the first Sabbath record by a couple months. But most rock songs and pop songs before Zeppelin were centered around the vocals and the chorus. But songs like Heartbreaker were written around the riff, which at the time was kind of atypical, kind of unprecedented, and just a classic hard rock riff and Heartbreaker. I mean, Young Guitar and Black Sabbath's Iron Man, those songs are like some of the first songs you'd probably learn on guitar. I have a guitar, maybe someday I'll learn, but I haven't learned yet, but I'd love to someday. But I'd probably start with a song like Heartbreaker if I ever did learn. And just that classic bluesy, the classic bluesy wails of Robert Plant throughout this song. There's kind of the little stop halfway through the song, and then it just cranks back up. A lot of changes and a lot of stops and starts in a lot of these Zeppelin songs. And then another song that I really like that was also released as a single, Whole Lotta Love, was released as a single for side one. And then this song, Living Loving Maid / She's Just a Woman, was released as side B's single. And it starts out with it's a very up-tempo kind of rocker, kind of a bluesy rocker, it's just a good rock song. Up-tempo intro, a good riff. It's really catchy. And then, of course, Ramble On. Similar to What Is and What Should Never Be on side one, it sort of starts kind of soft and tranquil and slow, and then they kind of crank it into gear with the heavy chorus, Ramble On, and then they go back to the softer. And Robert Plant wrote this song with some J.R.R. Tolkien influenced lyrics. In the lyrics, if you read them, it mentions Gollum and Gollum from Lord of the Rings. I believe at the time Robert Plant had read The Lord of the Rings, and in subsequent Zeppelin albums, there would also be some references to Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien, like Misty Mountain Hop, for example. The Misty Mountains referenced in Tolkien's books. That song is also referencing that. But I think that's so cool. I love Lord of the Rings. I've read all 3 books. So to have one of my favorite bands have a great rock song based off of one of my favorite books is just, just makes it twice as awesome. And then you have Moby Dick, obviously taken from the book of the same name by Herman Melville. And this is sort of just a song to showcase John Bonham's excellent drum skills. He also used his hands on some drum-like instruments to sort of give it that. I almost, when I first heard it, it kind of almost has like a tribal beat drum kind of sound. But Moby Dick, the song, is just kind of an extended drum solo, and then it kind of kicks into a more of a song vocal section towards the end. But what a great drum performance! I mean, basically, this is a drum solo. How cool is that in 1969? A drum solo. Drummers didn't get a lot of attention in 1969. It was mostly just the guitarist and the singer, mostly the singer at this time. But I would say bands like Zeppelin really helped push the guitarist to the forefront of being the star of a band as opposed to just the singer, like Elvis or the Beatles, all singing. The guitarist is sort of, you could argue Jimmy Page was sort of the first, or one of the first star guitarists. Maybe he was more popular than Robert Plant. When people think of Zeppelin, maybe they think of Page's face first. And that was kind of a first for a rock band at this time. And the next track, Bring It On Home. We Bring It On Home. What a great name for a last track on an album. We bring it on home, folks. Sort of a softer, slower song. Not a ballad, but sort of a bluesy number. Also, I believe a cover or lyrics were taken from some blues-influenced songs, maybe Howlin' Wolf, or there's a few others. Bluesy number. Nice tranquil closer to side 2, and just a great way to end a classic, great album. There isn't a bad song on this album, in my opinion. I would rate Led Zeppelin 2 a 95 out of 100. What's that out of 10? 8.75 or 9.75 out of 10. It's 4.5 out of 5 stars, 9.75 out of 10, 95 out of 100. It's not perfect, but it's a darn close to perfect album. And my personal favorite Zeppelin album. I like the first one, the self-titled, really good, but they hadn't quite found it yet. And this, to me, is quintessential Zeppelin. And in 3, they kind of experiment a little bit, a little more folksy. Led Zeppelin 4, probably their most well-known. This is probably, that classic album cover. This is probably, it's falling out there. This is probably, Stairway to Heaven, Black Dog, Rock and Roll, Misty Mountain Hop, When the Levee Breaks, Go Into California. Led Zeppelin 4 is probably their it's probably their best-selling album, no doubt. I don't actually know, but Led Zeppelin 4 is referenced in movies. I forget that 80s movie, but they reference, Play Led Zeppelin Side 1, some 80s movie. Off-referenced. Everyone knows it who knows rock. It's like the Abbey Road of Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin 2, for me, is the best Zepp album. 95 out of 100. I got this CD, 2-disc for $9.99 at CD Warehouse in Duluth, Georgia. Good deal. And the extra disc just has some extra bonus tracks, live tracks, etc. It's got a good booklet in here. Let's see the front, the back. Some good pictures of the band in there. Classic shots recording with the headphones on, sitting in the studio. Some playing live. Jimmy Page. Just some great shots in here of the band in action. I mean, it'd be cooler than that. And this was a used CD, and it was in great condition. I mean, whoever had this before me took very good care of it. Usually people who love their rock and roll music do take good care of their CDs and albums. I know I try to. So yeah, thank you for watching. That's my review of Led Zeppelin II, a classic rock album. Thank you for watching.